Hello, this is meant to be a short crash course in vector calculus. Vector calculus is a tool that's very useful for physicists and in various fields. You use it in classical mechanics, in electromagnetism, in quantum mechanics, you name it. It has tremendous applications. Any place where you need vectors and where you need to do calculus, differentiation, integration, and so on, you will need to learn vector calculus. You'll need to use these tools. I'm not quite sure how long I'm going to make this crash course. I'll try and wrap it up in an hour or two, but let's see how long it goes on. Uh, Disclaimer, I'm doing this from the point of view of utility of a physicist. So as students of physics, you will be required to use some amount of vector calculus. And that is the way I'm going to pitch this short course. The idea is not to give you a full mathematically rigorous description of vector calculus. That is a whole different field in itself, and those of you who are more interested in mathematical aspects of it should definitely look at other books, or you can write to me, we can discuss it separately. But for the purposes of this crash course, I'm only going to give you the kind of material that is required purely from the point of view of using it. So I maybe in some places I'll give you a little bit of physical insight, but generally it'll just be like a toolkit. So here is how you use these tools. Here is what you can do with them. So that's the philosophy we are going to adopt over here in this crash course. So vector calculus. So the very first thing that I'm going to do over here is I'm going to introduce to you scalars and vectors. You have seen these things before. Now, these words scalars and vectors have a very different meaning in mathematics. That is the more precise definition of scalars and vectors. We are not going to go into that. So we are going to look at it very superficially. From a physicist's point of view, a scalar is just a number, and a vector is something which has not just a number but also a direction. Mathematicians will cringe at this definition, and yes, this is not the formal definition, but it'll work for our purposes for now. So a scalar is just like a number. So 3 is a scalar, minus 1.2 is a scalar. They don't have to be real numbers. You can have a complex scalar also. So for example, if you want to define 5 plus 2i, which is a complex number, this is also an example of a scalar. Basically, it's just a number. Vectors, on the other hand, have a direction as well. So for example, if I was talking about the xy plane, then you know that in general you can define some vector v in this in terms of its components. So this vector v will have one x component called, let's call it v1, and a y component, let's call it v2, and then I can write this as v1 I hat plus v2 j hat. I and j are the unit vectors along the x and y axis. In general, I can also have, it could be a three-dimensional space, and then I could also have a plus v3 k hat, where k is the unit vector in the z direction. So an example of a vector would be something like 2i plus 3j minus k. You could have 5.1i minus no j component is 0, minus 1.3k. This is also a valid vector. You can have complex vectors also, where some of these components might not be real numbers, they might be complex. So these are scalars and vectors. Now the next thing I want to tell you about is the concept of a field. Once again, mathematicians have a very different definition of what a field is. That is not what we are concerned about. This, by what we mean when we say field, is something different. We mean by field some quantity that varies depending on where it is. So it value depends on its location. So it has some xyz coordinates. Its value depends on where it is. So for example, suppose the temperature, it depends on where you are. So we'll refer to this, the fact that the temperature depends on your location, we'll refer to that as a temperature field. So let me show you briefly one example of the temperature field, and I think looking at that picture will make the idea very clear to you. Okay, so what we are seeing over here is from this website windy.com. It's a website which tells you the current weather, and it also forecasts the weather. And what we are looking at on this map right now is the temperature. So on the bottom right, you should be able to see a scale right here. So it's marked by color. The coldest areas are marked in purple, and these might have a temperature of up to -20 degrees. Let's look for them. Yeah, up here in Siberia. And then as it gets warmer, those areas are marked by green. So around 5 to 10 degrees is marked by green. And then finally, the hottest areas are marked in orange and red. So India is quite warm. The interior of Australia is extremely hot right now, around 40 degrees. Yeah, southern hemisphere summer, right? So what you're seeing over here is, so for now, for the time being, forget that the world is spherical. Just think of it as flat. In fact, now that we have zoomed in to a very small part of the world, you can almost assume that this space is flat. So you can think of it as the XY plane. So every location on this map has an X coordinate and a Y coordinate. And depending on where you are, the temperature is different. So over here, the temperature is marked by orange, but there are parts over here where it is marked by yellow. So it's cooler over here. So the temperature clearly depends on where you are. So we'll say, so this figure that you're seeing over here, this map that you're seeing over here, we refer to it as as showing the temperature field, because it shows you the temperature at each value of x and y. Now another example of a field could be the speed of the wind. Since we're talking about this weather map, let's talk about the speed of the wind. So I'm just going to change this. Instead of looking at temperatures, I'm going to look at the wind. Once again, on the bottom right over here, you can see a scale which tells you what is the speed of the wind at any given point in space. So for example, the places where it's dark blue, like for example over here, the wind speed is quite low. It's only around, it's less than 10 kilometers per hour. But then the green areas, it's going faster at around 30-35 kilometers per hour. And then there will be parts on the map where it's looking purple, and that's going to be very, very fast winds. So for example, you can see over here, there are very high speed winds over here in the Atlantic Ocean at the moment. In fact, a couple of days ago when there was a cyclone over Chennai, even this area over here was looking purple because of very high winds. So this is another example of a field where the speed of the wind depends on where you are. However, there's one complication over here. The speed of the wind doesn't just have a magnitude like this, it also has a direction. So wind speed, since it's a velocity, it also has a direction, it's a vector. So let's ask this page to show us the vectors as well. Yeah, so you should be able to see the actual flow of the wind right now. So now what this map is showing you is, of course, the magnitude, which is given by the color coding, but also the direction. So for example, if you're over here, then you can see that the wind is mostly flowing towards the west. But if you're over here, you'll see that the wind is flowing towards the south. If you come here, you can find that the wind is flowing north and so on. So at every point, the velocity field of the wind is given by a magnitude and by direction. So this is now a vector field. What we saw earlier, the temperature, was a scalar field because it just had a magnitude. But you can also have a vector field where there is a vector whose value depends on where you are located. So when I said in the definition of field that it is some quantity that varies in space, that quantity can be a scalar quantity or it can be a vector quantity. So over here, I'll say scalar or vector quantity. So let's look at some examples of, just to write down some examples. So what if I define a scalar field? Let's give it a name. Let's call it lambda. And this has to be a function of x, y, z. So for example, this could just be something like x plus y square minus cosine z. This is a scalar field because first of all, it's a scalar. It only has a magnitude and the value depends on where you are. It depends on the x, y, z values. So this is an example of a scalar field. What would be an example of a vector field? So I'll define some v vector as a function of x, y, z. So I can say maybe it is x, y, I hat plus z cube j hat minus z plus cosine x k hat. So this is a vector because it has x, y, z components, and the value of this vector and the value of its components depends on where you are sitting in x, y, z. So if I call this, so I can say that this x, y, what I'm calling over here, this is the x component. So I'll say this is some v1 of x, y, z I hat plus v2, which is also a function of x, y, z j hat, plus v3, which is also a function of x, y, z k hat. So this would be an example of a vector field. What are some physical examples of scalar fields and vector fields? So physical example of a scalar field we have already seen. Temperature is one example. Altitude could be one example. Not attitude, altitude. What else can you think of? Something like density. So if you have a solid object with you, which is not uniform, its density is changing in different parts of it. So think of it as a ball which was not very well made. So in some places the plastic has clumped up, in some places it is very loosely bound. So the density is varying depending on where inside the ball you are. So density can also be a scalar field. Examples of vector field could be, as we saw over here right now, wind velocity. How about electric field? If you have some charges, then those charges will produce an electric field. And the electric field will be more close to the charge and it will be less as you go farther away from the charge. So that is an example of a vector field. So all of this that I'm discussing right now, it often comes under the broad topic of multivariable calculus. Uh, so normally you always deal with functions of a single variable. At least that's what you've been doing so far. But now you're seeing functions not of one variable but of three variables, because lambda depends on x, y, z, or the v vector depends on x, y, z. So this is often referred to as multivariable calculus. Now, what is the one of the main differences between doing single variable calculus and multivariable calculus is as follows. So suppose right now first we are just looking at uh, a single variable function. So let's make a drawing. This is x, and I'm going to plot some function f of x. Now what can you do with this graph of this function? First of all, you can find what is the value of x. So if you tell me a value of x, you say here at this value x0, what is the value of the function? Then okay, I can just read off the value over here, and I'll say this is the value of fx at this point. I can also find out what is the derivative of the function at this point. And what is derivative? In order to find the derivative, I just need to know the slope of the tangent at this point. So at this point x0, over here I'll draw a tangent to the curve, and if I find the slope of this, then this is just df by dx at this point x0. So I can find the derivative, and I can also of course find the integral. So if you want me to integrate this function from some a to b, this is not very clear, hang on. So if you want me to integrate from a to b, then what integral from a to b does is it just finds the area under this curve f of x. So this entire area is integral of f of x from a to b. So I can do all of these things with a function of one variable, and I want to be able to do something similar also now that I have functions of multiple variables. So if I have scalar fields and vector fields, the question is how do I take derivatives and integrals over that. So that is what we're going to be discussing over here. That is what we call vector calculus.